First of all, I use a cell phone. I use it very often, and I do not think they are evil devices. I think that they require some discipline in order to make sure that it does not become a negative force in one's life. So I personally restrict the number of hours that I'm on the phone, and in particular on social media. I only answer email at particular times of day. But what about the cell phone itself? I was very interested in a particular study that was published back in 2013 on rats. It was basically took a cell phone and put it under a cage of rats and looked at basically testicular and ovarian development in rats, and saw minor but still statistically significant defects in ovarian and testicular development. Since then, and now returning to the literature, I've seen an absolute explosion of studies, some of which are in quality journals, some of which are in what I would call not blue ribbon journals, identifying defects in testicular and or ovarian development by mere exposure to cell phone emitted waves. Let's just call that. We don't know what they are. And this sounds almost crazy, right? Anytime somebody starts talking about EMFs and things like that, you kind of worry, like, is this person okay? But look, the literature are pointing in a direction where chronic exposure of the gonads to cell phones could be creating serious issues in terms of the health at the cellular level and in terms of the output. So the output for the testes would be sperm production. Swimming speed in sperm is an important feature of sperm health. In the ovaries, it would be estrogenic output, how regular the cycles are. So in animals, the cycles are a little bit different than in humans. They don't have a menstrual cycle. They have an estrous cycle, which is generally around 4 days. I think that it's fair to say, based on the literature, that there are effects of cell phone emitted waves on gonadal development. The question is, what is the proximity of the cell phone to the gonads? Now, I've taken the literature as I observe it, and I don't like to have my cell phone on and in my pocket. I'm well past puberty, but nonetheless, some of these effects were seen in adult animals. There are effects now that have been demonstrated in humans, so let's just talk about a couple of those effects. So a paper published in the journal Clinical Biochemistry from Eskander et al. Looked at hormone profiles in people based on proximity to their phone and frequency of phone use, where they stored their phone on their body, as well as proximity of where they lived to, I guess they're called these radio frequency towers, so the base stations. And they were looking at effects of radio frequency radiation, RFR, on human hormone profiles. And they show significant decreases in cortisol. You might say, well, that might be good, but you need that morning cortisol bump in order to wake up. Morning cortisol is good. But also thyroid hormones were significantly reduced. Prolactin in young females, that's definitely concerning. And testosterone levels in males and females. And so there are now quite good data showing that being close to the phone too much of the day, and how close is an interesting question, or living near one of these base stations apparently can have effects on hormone profiles. And when you see a study like this, one should always ask, well, what are the other things that could also have effects on these hormone profiles, right? Because you could imagine that if you ran the same study of people that live close to a waterway or close to a highway where there's a lot of exhaust from buses and cars, you might see similar effects. So you have to take these sorts of studies with a grain of salt. But I think it's very interesting, and given that the last time I looked into these data were way back when I was a junior professor, and there was like 1 or 2 studies that I could find. One of the studies pointed to increases in testosterone in rats where they had close proximity to these radio frequency radiation waves. And then in the other case, it showed decreases in testosterone. So there really wasn't any conclusion to take away from that. Now there's pretty impressive amount of data pointing to the fact that there are effects of these things on hormones. I don't know what to do with that information. I'm not going to stop using my phone, but in light of the work from Tyrone Hayes and others looking at sperm counts and looking at the decrease in testosterone levels and sperm counts and fertility over the last 20, 30 years, perhaps it's not surprising. Although there again, cell phones and smartphones have really been in prominent use mostly within the last 10 or 11 years. And so it's hard to explain all of those declines simply on the basis of cell phone use.